Dear students, welcome to the session on dividend policy and firm's value. Dividend is share in profit. Dividends are paid in cash generally. So the dividend policy of a firm has effect on its earnings in two parts: the retained earnings and dividend. Retained earning provides fund to finance projects for long-term growth, whereas payment of dividend involves use of available cash of the firm. So the payment of the dividend and the retention is normally decided based on factors like shareholders' expectations, firm's liquidity. In the absence of liquidity, it is not advisable for the firm to pay more as dividend. Rather, it may have to retain for its own requirements. After listening to this lesson video, you will understand about the financial models on dividend policy and firm's value. Let us now get into the dividend policy financial models. Dear students, this session is about dividend policy decisions and firm's value. A firm may go for different dividend policy in terms of dividend payout. It may follow 100% payout or 50% payout or 0% payout. So this lesson video will help you to understand how various dividend policy payout decisions impacts on firm's value. For this purpose, we are going to consider Walter model. Professor J.E. Walter argues that the choice of dividend policies normally affects the value of the firm. Let us now look at his model. His model is based on the following assumptions. The firm finances all its investment through retained earnings. The firm's rate of return R and its cost of capital K are constant. The firm have 100% dividend payment or retention ratio. The firm's EPS and DPS are constant forever in determining a given value of firm, where EPS means the earnings per share and the DPS is dividend per share. Now let us look at the model in terms of the equation by which the firm's value is determined. The equation is like this: P equal to D plus E minus D times of R by K whole divided by K, where P is price per equity and E is earnings per share and D is dividend per share, R is rate of return on investments, K is cost of equity capital. Now let us take up an example to understand the application of Walter's model. Firms are classified into three categories: growth firm, where R is greater than K; normal firm, where R is equal to K; and declining firm, where R is less than the K. R is the rate of return and the K is the cost of capital. So in case of a growth firm, when the R is 15% and K is 10%, we are assuming cost of capital as 10% in all the three cases. Whereas in growth firm, it is assumed that the R is greater than the K. In the normal firm, it is considered to be equal to cost of capital. Whereas in case of declining firm, the rate of return is considered as less than the cost of capital. At the given level of earnings per share of rupees 10, substituting values in the equation, it was found that the growth firm's value is rupees 150. Whereas in the normal firm it is 100 and it is 80. When the dividend payout ratio is 0%. That means 100% is their retention. Whereas when the payout ratio is 40%, that means the company is planning to retain 60%, the value is declining from 150 to 130 rupees per share. And the more the payout ratio, that is when the firm increases its payout ratio from 40 to 80%, that means when the retention is less, the value further declines. And when the payout is 100%, that means there is no retention, the value further declines to rupees 100. So, our observation is that if the payout is 0% or otherwise the retention is 100%, in case of growth firm, the value or the market price per share is maximum. Whereas in case of normal firm, it remains same, no matter the dividend payout ratio, 0% or 40% or 80% or 100%, price per share remains same, no change. Why? Because the rate of return and the cost of capital are the same. Whereas in case of declining firm, when the payout is 0, the price is rupees 80. The more they pay out, the price increases. If you see, the payout is 0%, it is only 80. When the firm is going in for a payout ratio of 40%, when it increases the payout ratio from 40 to 80%, the price increases from 88 to 96. And ultimately, when the payout ratio becomes 100%, that is, whatever is earned is paid. That means zero retention, the price is maximum. So the implications of Walter's model is that the optimal payout ratio for a growth firm is nil or 0%. The optimal payout ratio for a normal firm is irrelevant. The optimal payout ratio for a declining firm is 100%. So from this model, we understand that the dividend payout ratio impacts on the firm's value depending upon the rate of return and the cost of capital as well as the payout ratio. Dear students, this session is about Gordon model on dividend policy and firm's value. Myron Gordon proposed a model of stock valuation using the dividend capitalization approach. His model is based on the following assumptions. Retained earnings represent the only source of financing for the firm, which means he assumes that his framework or the model is applicable to an all-equity firm or an unlevered firm. Like Walter model, the Gordon model also connects investment decision to dividend decision. The rate of return on the firm's investment is assumed to be constant. The growth rate of the firm is the product of its retention ratio and its rate of return. The cost of capital for the firm remains constant and it is greater than the growth rate. The firm has a perpetual life. Tax does not exist. Now let us move on to the application or the valuation formula. P naught is equal to E1 times of 1 minus B divided by K minus BR is the valuation formula of Gordon model, where P naught is equal to price per share at the end of year 0. 0th year means today. So it is current price per share. It is the calculated price or theoretical price. E1 is earnings per share at the end of year 1. B is the plowback ratio or the retention ratio. 1 minus B is the dividend payout ratio. K is the shareholders' required rate of return, otherwise cost of capital to the firm. R is the rate of return earned on investments made by the firm. BR is the growth rate of earnings or dividends. Now let us take up an example to understand the formula. R is equal to 20%. It is the rate of return expected from the investment made by the firm. K, the cost of capital or the return expected by shareholders, is 15%. E1 is the earnings per share a year hence is given as rupees 4. B, that is the retention ratio, is 25%, 0.25 or otherwise. Now we will substitute the values in the equation to find out the current price. E1, that is earnings per share a year hence, rupees 4, multiplied by 1 minus retention ratio, which means 0.75, that is 3/4 of rupees 4 to be taken as the payout ratio. Out of earnings of rupees 4, 75% will be paid because B denotes the retention. 25% will be retained and 75% will be paid as dividend. So the numerator is always the payout ratio divided by K, the cost of capital, which is 15%, minus BR. B is the retention ratio given as 0.25 or 25%, multiplied by R, the return on investment, is 20%. So by simplifying the equation, 75% of rupees 4, nothing but rupees 3, that is the dividend per share, is capitalized by the difference between the cost of capital and the growth rate. Growth rate is calculated by multiplying the retention ratio and the return expected from investments by the firm. So if you simplify this, you will get 5%. So 15% minus 5%, it is 10%. So 3 rupees is capitalized by 10% to arrive at the value per share, which is rupees 30, which is the calculated price per share of the firm. Now let us take up an example to understand the dividend policy, variations, and its application using Gordon's model. So normally, as we discussed earlier in the Walter model, firms are classified into three categories: growth firm, normal firm, and declining firm. Growth firm where R is greater than K. Here the cost of capital again considered as 10% commonly, and earnings per share a year hence is taken as ₹10 commonly in all the three category of firms. When the payout ratio is 40%, that means out of 10 rupees of earnings, 40% will be paid. That means 4 rupees will be paid, which is otherwise mentioned as 10 multiplied by 1 minus 0.6. Nothing but 4 rupees. That's what is shown over here. 4 rupees divided by K, which is 10%, minus 0.09, which is BR, which is calculated separately and shown here. B, which is 6%. So payout is 40, means the balance will be the retention. 0.6 will be the retention. Multiplied by R, which is 15%, 0.15. So you get growth rate of 0.09. Nothing but 9%. So K minus G, or the BR, is 0.09. So 10% minus 9%. So 4 rupees divided by 1%. 4 rupees divided by 1%. That means 4 rupees capitalized by 1%. You get 400 rupees per share. Is the theoretical calculated value as per Gordon model. Similarly, when the firm increases the payout ratio from 40 to 60%, in the similar manner, if we calculate, the price decreases because it is a growth firm. For a growth firm which has opportunities of making better earnings, if the retention is more, the price will be more. That means the payout should be less. So comparing with the 60%, if the payout is 40%, the price is more. The price is 400. Whereas when you increase the payout, the price decreases. If you want the price per share to increase, a growth firm should always go for less payout and more retention. Similarly, if you increase the payout ratio from 60% to 90%, further the price decreases. That means your retention is only 10%. When you know that your return on investment is 5% more than the cost of capital, it is advisable that the company should retain more and reduce its payout so as to maximize the price per share. Whereas when we consider the normal firm, the variations of the payout ratio, no matter 40% or 60%, 90%, it has no influence on the price per share because the R and the K remains same. In case of declining firm, where the return on investment is given as only 8% comparing with the cost of capital, that means the opportunities of getting more return on investment is less. In such case, the more they pay out, if they pay 90%, if the payout ratio is 90%, the price per share is the maximum, is 98 rupees. Whereas if their payout ratio is less, which is 40%, it will be only rupees 77. So for a declining firm, it is advisable to go in for higher payout ratio. Whereas for a growth firm, it is advisable to go in for the lower payout ratio to maximize firm's value or price per share. Let us now derive the implications. When the rate of return is greater than the discount rate, the price per share increases as the dividend payout ratio decreases. When the rate of return is equal to the discount rate or the cost of capital or the return expected by the shareholders, the price per share remains unchanged. That means the price per share remains constant in response to variations in the dividend payout ratio. Otherwise, it means irrespective of the dividend payout ratio, price per share remains unchanged in case of normal firm, where the rate of return is equal to the discount rate. When the rate of return is less than the discount rate, the price per share increases as the dividend payout ratio increases. So, comparing with Walter and the Gordon's model, the similarities such that, or the implications are similar both in case of Walter and the Gordon model. In both the cases, the optimal payout ratio for a growth firm is nil. The optimal payout ratio for a normal firm is irrelevant. The optimal payout ratio for a declining firm is 100%. Hope you are in a position to understand Gordon's model on dividend policy and its impact on firm's value. Thank you. Dear students, in our previous sessions, we discussed about dividend policy and its impact on firm's value. From the previous sessions, particularly on the Walters and the Gordon model, we observed that the dividend payout ratio and the retention ratio impacts on the market price per share depending on the rate of return expected on investment opportunities and the shareholders' expected rate of return, nothing but the cost of capital. It was found that all these variables influence the market price per share or the firm's value from the Walter and the Gordon's model. Today, we will look at the MM's, Modigliani Miller's position on dividend policy and its effect on firm's value. MM believes that value of a firm depends solely on its earnings power, and he argues that the firm's value is not influenced by the dividend policy. So, MM's theory or approach is referred to as dividend irrelevance theorem. MM's argument: if a company retains earnings, the shareholder enjoys capital appreciation equal to the amount of earnings retained. Whereas, if it distributes earnings by way of dividends, instead of retaining it, the shareholder enjoys dividends equal in value to the amount by which his capital would have appreciated had the company chosen to retain its earnings. Hence, the division of earnings between dividends and retained earnings is irrelevant from the point of view of the shareholders. MM's hypothesis is based on the following assumptions. He assumes that there is the existence of perfect capital market, which means information is freely available to everyone, and there are no transaction costs and flotation costs, no corporate taxes, no difference in the tax rates applicable to capital gains and dividends, and risk of uncertainty does not exist. Investment and dividend decisions are independent. According to hypothesis, the market value of the shares issued at the end of year 1, which is N plus M P1, is no way affected by the dividend paid at the end of year D1, where N is equal to number of outstanding equity shares at time 0. M denotes the number of equity shares issued at time 1 to meet firm's investment needs at prevailing price at the end of year 1. P1 is the prevailing market price at time 1. The reason is simple. The dividend paid at the end of year 1 influences the prevailing price at the end of year 1, and the number of shares additionally to be issued at the end of time 1 to meet firm's investment needs will offset mutually. In other words, if a firm pays more dividend, price decreases by the number of shares to be issued additionally to meet its investment needs increases. And conversely, if the firm pays less dividend a year hence, the price increases and the number of shares to be issued decreases. Let us now consider an example. Suppose Xeon company currently has 1000 equity shares outstanding, currently selling at rupees 10 per share. Here N is the number of outstanding shares, which is 1000, and the current market price is rupees 10. The market value of the firm will be rupees 10,000. Xeon's expected earnings and investment need for the next year are rupees 1000 and rupees 1110 respectively. If Xeon pays a dividend of rupee 1 per share next year, that is D1 is rupee 1, its price at the end of time 1 will be rupees 10. The implication of this is that it will have to issue 111 new shares at rupees 10 per share to finance its investment need of rupees 1110. That is, the market value of shares at the end of time 1, that is, N is the number of existing shares and M is the new shares to be issued, multiplied by the prevailing price at the end of time 1 is equal to rupees 11,110. On the other hand, if Xeon does not pay dividend next year, if D1 is rupees 0, its P1 will be rupees 11. The implication of that will be it will have to issue 10 share at rupees 11 per share to finance its investment need of rupees 1110. So the value of rupees 11,110, if divided by 11 rupees per share, you will get 1010 will be the total shares, that is the existing as well as the new shares. So from out of the total of 1010 shares, if you subtract existing 1000 shares, the additional shares to be issued can be calculated. So irrespective of the D1, D1 may be rupee 1 or if it is 0, the market value of shares at the time 1 is equal to rupees 11,110. Criticisms of MM's position. MM assumptions on dividend irrelevance are considered unrealistic on account of the following reasons. Investors have to pay different taxes on dividend income and capital gains. It cannot be the same. It was assumed that it will remain the same. In reality, the dividend paid on dividend income, the taxes paid on the dividend income and capital gains cannot be the same. The firm's internal and external financing are not equivalent, because when a firm goes for external financing, flotation costs are involved. The homemade dividend benefit cannot be fully realized. For example, a share worth rupees 100 may fetch a net amount of rupees 99 after transaction cost if it is rupees 1, or the net amount may be 90 rupees if the transaction costs are rupees 10, which may be required to buy a share or even to sell a share. So transaction costs are something that cannot be avoided. Similarly, investors may have a desire to diversify the portfolios from the dividend income. If firm does not distribute the dividend, then investors will be inclined to use a higher value of K, that is the required rate of return or the cost of capital to the firm, if they expect the firm to use retained earnings for internal financing. The current receipt of money in the form of dividends is considered safer than the uncertain potential gain in future by investors. So, according to the dividend payout policy has no relevance to firm's value or market price per share of a firm, and he considers it to be irrelevant. Hope you are in a position to understand the MM's position on dividend policy and firm's value. Thank you.